Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Allison Dagney discusses the methodology that helps us reprogram the thoughts that create emotional pain and suffering so that we can heal and move forward after emotional abuse.
Because if you are going from a really, really scary place to freedom, right? And you get out and you're like, oh my gosh, I can breathe and nobody's like criticizing me and breathing down my neck and I'm not feeling afraid like I was before. There is a time, like a decompression time, where you have to just like figure everything out, like, who am I? And, what am I doing? And then you have like, okay, if you have court and you have all these, other things that are happening with the children and custody, there's a lot of moving parts that are happening for women, especially who are escaping abuse. So keep that in mind. But what was in the back of my mind this whole time before I started writing the book was, I have to tell people, like that was the main thing in my brain. So what I said,
the Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. The Healing Through Love podcast with host Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Lynch from charlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is here to help victims and survivors of domestic and family violence wherever they are on their journey of healing. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are. As well as the Healing Through Love podcast, we hold annual Pamper Days here in Adelaide, South Australia, for survivors of domestic and family violence. Local businesses come together and they pay it forward by providing services and resources for a day to give it back, to create a soft place to land for the survivors. It's a beautiful day of indulgence. We are looking for organisations and people with similar values. Reach out to us. We're hello@healingthroughlove.org, and we'll put the details here to connect with us. So we're looking for local businesses and even businesses abroad that are looking to connect with us and to connect with the people that we serve. Today we have a special guest with us, Allison K. Dagney. She is a thought work coach, author of Tears Leave Scars, the survivor of a 20 years of covert narcissistic abuse. Now, she's been through the ringer herself, and she has now lived to tell the story and written a beautiful book. And today here, Allison's going to take us on a journey of her escape and how she then wrote her book and is now out the other side as a coach helping those in need. Hello and welcome, Allison. How are you today?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm super excited to be here today.
It's such a blessing to have you here with us today. Please, if you are open, can you tell us a little bit about your story? Where did it start and when did you know that it was problematic?
Yeah, I would love to share. So, I'm going to go all the way back to when I first met my now ex-husband, and we were very young. I was only 19 years old. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of, that whirlwind of love and a lot of wonderful, happy feelings that go along with being in a new relationship. And I was in that relationship with him for a couple of years before we got engaged, and we got married very young at 21 years old. And it was very quick. It was a very quick progression. We were, I from when I look back at it, there was a lot of love bombing. There was a lot of, talk of soulmates and meant to be and gifts and presents and trips and all kinds of things that were really there, I think, looking back in hindsight, to trap me in that relationship. But I didn't know any better. And I had these ideas of like riding off into the sunset with my, knight in shining armor. And it definitely did not turn out like that. After being in that relationship, being married to him, we were together for about 17 years. And during the course of that, we had 3 children together. And throughout the whole time that I was married, I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like that I was the problem and that I had needed to change something about who I was. I was constantly trying to be better. I was constantly trying to do more. I was always trying to please him so that he wouldn't be upset or that he wouldn't criticize me. And throughout those 17 years, I tried to go to therapy. He begged me to go to therapy, but not with him. He just wanted me to go and get help. He wanted me to go to the doctor and figure out why I was so emotional. And he wanted me to figure out why I had anxiety and all of these things. But, when you're in a relationship like that and you don't know, I didn't know how to name it. I didn't know what it was. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And what happened was, and this is in my book, and anybody can read my book. They could read the whole story, and they'll probably find a lot of very similar stories to their own. As this is the thing I hear from people all the time. They can relate to it so well. Someone on the internet told me that when I was talking to this person, that sounds like abuse. And I thought, what? How is that abuse? He's never hit me. He doesn't even raise his voice. He doesn't yell. He doesn't cuss. I never even heard him say a cuss word the entire time I knew him. So I was very shocked to hear that this was abuse. And I sort of brushed it under the rug and did not even consider that as a possibility. But it was still kind of nagging in the back of my mind because I never had an answer. I always thought there was something wrong with me. So one day I decided to look it up, and I decided to research about narcissism and sociopathy and things like that. And my head exploded because I couldn't believe what I was reading. He was checking every single box of the things that I was reading online. And so what happened was I started piecing together, oh my gosh, maybe it isn't me. Maybe I am not the problem that I've been told to believe, that I was crazy and I was the problem this whole time, and feeling so confused and feeling so lost and just feeling like I was a horrible person and a horrible wife. And so the pieces started falling together, right? And when that happened, the skies parted for me, and I thought, wow, maybe this is something I need to learn more about. So that's when I started getting into and I know you probably know this, a lot of people, they start educating themselves, and that's what I was doing. And I was learning all about this. And this was all done secretly. I didn't let him know this. I didn't go to him and tell him that I suspected he was an abuser or suspected he was narcissistic. I did none of that. I was very, very secretive because I was afraid that if he found out, then something else bad could happen to me. So through all of that, I ended up being able to plan an escape. I did it very secretly. I got an attorney without him knowing. I paid a fee without him knowing. I got all of our documents together, all of this stuff so that he didn't know. And basically planned my escape, got my kids and got out of there, and then delivered the news to him that I was divorcing him after I'd already moved my stuff out of the house. So that's my story. That's how it started. And I just thought after that, I need to let other people know that this is a real thing, because if I was sitting there for 20 years in this relationship with this person thinking it was all my fault, when in reality it wasn't, other people are probably experiencing that too. And I just felt like something was calling me, telling me, you have to tell people this. How could I have been so in the dark? And who else is in the dark? And who else needs a flashlight and needs help out of there? So that's why I decided to write my book. After I wrote my book, then I became a coach.
I love it. So do you think that this might be something like red flags and these sorts of things? Do you think this is something that we would be educating children in schools about, and is maybe in the subject of sociology? Do you have sociology in the States?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's not in like the younger grades, really. You don't get into that until some high schools will offer it, but not until you're in college as a university. But I truly believe that would be something that could help people because, when I was younger, I didn't know anything about red flags. I didn't know anything about love bombing. Love bombing to me is really, really, really critical. Like I teach my own children about that. I'm like, if people are trying to move too quickly, if people are trying to claim that you're meant to be or that you're soulmates in a rapid progression, if they're showering you with gifts, and I mean, gifts are fine. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with gifts. It's when you're making this happen in such a very short period of time when you haven't even really gotten to know the person, right? Like building relationships takes time. It's not something that just happens within a couple of weeks, but that's what it was for me. I mean, literally within a few weeks, we were like in love with each other and everything was perfect and rosy. And like what you're saying, if we could educate people on this, especially young girls and boys at a very young age about what love bombing is, what red flags are, what's normal for a relationship, what isn't normal. I think that could be really, really beneficial to prevention of people getting into relationships like this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and even understanding love languages, understanding that others communicate differently. And that might give, and I'm thinking teenagers, I'm not thinking preschool or primary school, I'm thinking more, so we say year 9 to year 12. So that'd be like matric age. So maybe 14 to perhaps 17 or something. Do you think that would be an appropriate age to learn these things?
Absolutely. And that's the age that my daughters are right now. They're 15 and almost 17. And I have these conversations with them so that they know and they can be aware of, because love bombing doesn't just happen in romantic relationships, right? It can also happen in relationships with friends. It can happen at work. It can happen in family dynamics. It can happen anywhere, right? So yes, we want to be careful, but basically we want to just show them that this is a thing, right? Like this is a real thing, that people do this on purpose to try to trap you. Like it's not really like, obviously they're not trapping you in a cage, but theoretically that's really what it was for me. I was in a cage for 20 years that I couldn't get out of and I didn't know why. So to prevent that, it's educating these young people. Like, so if you have children and they're old enough to understand this, to explain that to them and give them those resources and just information.
Absolutely. Yeah, so they could be discussing things like cohesive control and gaslighting and all of those things that we now are common language to us. But if we dial the clock back to when we were on the other side, we didn't even know what they were, let alone that that's what the environment that we were living in. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so how's your children's relationship with your father, or there isn't one?
So that we actually have 50-50 custody. So we have split custody. So they see their father. They do have a relationship with their father. Now, I don't really feel like my interpretation of their relationship would be fair. Yeah. But I think that they, based on some of the things that my children have told me, they can see the way that their father is. And I was very careful when I first left. My oldest was, I think, 11 or 12 years old. And so I was very careful not to say, your dad is this, or your dad's a bad person, or your dad's he's gaslighting you, or I didn't do any of that. I literally let them see and experience it for themselves, because I didn't want to be the person who was tainting their impression of him, because just because he treated me that way didn't mean he was treating them that way, right? So I wanted to make sure that they were able to think with their own brains and identify with their own eyes and hear with their own ears and see all of the things that he was doing. And if it impacted them, to let them discern, right, what he is. And is he being the best dad he can be for them. So right now I do see that, they come back to me and say things, and I know that they're struggling because he is who he is. And I truly believe that he has narcissistic tendencies, high ones, and it's not something that he can hide even from his children. So they are being affected by that, unfortunately, but they're smart kids and they stand up for themselves. They call out gaslighting, they call out manipulation, they call out guilt trips. And I couldn't be happier that they have taken that stance, because I know that when they're in relationships of their own in the future, that they'll take that same sort of mentality with those people that they're in relationships with.
And maybe that's the answer. I know with Healing Through Love, we're about education, and we want to have the conversations, hence the podcast. So, if we can find a way to have these subjects discussed in schools, then, and that can be an open forum, then maybe we can put an end to this. People, the children, I'm saying boys and girls, because it's not just one or the other, they can be more resilient, they can spot it before it happens, and they can come in from a more powerful position, so they won't be victims themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know that there are certain groups that are trying to teach young people, about like teen violence and teen dating and, all of that kind of stuff, which is wonderful. Here, I don't think it's really gotten into the schools or anything like that. So really who it's up to are the parents, right? It's up to us as mom and dad at this point to educate our kids and teach them about this stuff, from whatever age that they feel like is appropriate, that child will understand it. If it's 10 years old, tell them at 10. If it's, if they've got a little friend on the playground who's, treating them bad or doing something, teach them at whatever age that it is that they feel like it's appropriate. You don't have to use terms like gaslighting and coercive control, but you can ask your kids questions like, well, how do you feel about that? How do you think they should be treating you? Do you feel like that's a nice way to treat a friend, or whatever that might be? And use those kinds of questions to help your children make these decisions on their own, right? It's different when a parent is just kind of barking at you and telling you what you should do and how you should behave and who you should be friends with. Like, allow them to come to these conclusions on their own.
I love it. So it's a big jump from getting out, escaping, and then writing the book. So what transitioned for you in that space so that you felt that you'd called to write a book?
So, because if you are going from a really, really scary place to freedom, right? And you get out and you're like, oh my gosh, I can breathe and nobody's like criticizing me and breathing down my neck, and I'm not feeling afraid like I was before. There is a time, like a decompression time, where you have to just like figure everything out. Like, who am I? And, what am I doing? And then you have like, okay, if you have court and you have all these, other things that are happening with the children and custody, there's a lot of moving parts that are happening for women, especially who are escaping abuse. So keep that in mind. But what was in the back of my mind this whole time before I started writing the book was, I have to tell people, I have to tell people, I have to tell people. Like, that was the main thing in my brain. So what I started doing literally upon leaving was I was writing everything down. I had my phone out and I had a voice note, and I would just leave myself voice notes anytime something would come up that I'm like, this is important for people to know. Anytime a memory would strike me or I'd be triggered by something, I'd write it down. So it took me 2 years from start to finish to write and edit and publish the book. But I feel like it was because a lot of that was reliving so much of the trauma. I was out of the relationship, but I had to sit down. I can remember being at my kitchen table with my computer and closing my eyes and trying to go back into these really traumatic situations so that I could bring it to life so that people could read it and really resonate with it. So that was very difficult, but it was also really therapeutic and healing at the same time. So some people say to me, I really want to write a book, and I could definitely write a book someday. And I'm like, do it. Because even if you don't even publish that, it is so healing to get your story out on paper or in a computer or on a blog or however you want to do that. So for me, it was never a question. I knew it was going to be published. I could see it. Actually, before I published my book, I took a regular, like a hardback book, and I drew my own cover on the book, and I put it there, and I set it in front of my computer to help me reach that goal. Because for me, it was all about, if it could just help one person, if it helps one person, it's worth it. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of money, and it was a lot of time and a lot of energy. But if it helped one person, then to me, it was worth it.
And then from there, then your coaching career began. Is that how that?
So I never, first of all, I never intended to be an author my entire life. Like, I always liked English and reading and writing in school, but I never thought, like, I worked in a corporate job before I met my ex. Well, not before, well, during the first 5 years that we were married, and till I had kids, and then I became a stay-home mom. But I never thought, oh yeah, I'm just going to aspire to be an author someday. That was never the goal. And the same thing with being a coach. I wouldn't have been able to be a coach had I not experienced what I experienced, right? Because the experience that I had helped me be able to help other people. So I ended up, just by happenstance, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, came in contact with a woman who developed a subconscious healing methodology to help people get into your subconscious mind and release the things that are blocking you and resisting your healing. So once I started doing it for myself, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I had gone to therapy for 4.5 years. I did EMDR. I did all kinds of other things to try to heal during the years that I had left my abuser. And nothing really worked for good. Like, nothing ever worked, lasting wise. Like, everything was temporary. So for me, I was like, if this is helping me so much, I need to teach people how to do this so everybody can experience the level of healing that I have. So that's how I ended up becoming a coach and doing this work. And it's been so fulfilling and so rewarding, because it's just spreading this, ripple effect out into the world and helping people experience the same level of healing that I've had.
Oh, that's fantastic. And this therapy that you use, is it akin to anything else like NLP or something else that we might be familiar with?
Yes, NLP it's rooted in a lot of NLP and brain science, because that is what the woman who developed it, that's her training and her background. So it's really just getting into what drives our emotions, and that is the beliefs that we hold in our subconscious, which is also the programming that we have from the day we were born up until the time that we were about 7 or 8 years old. So that is, yes, it is NLP. It is a lot of brain training. It's a lot of neuroscience types of stuff, which is why it's so different, and why it's so, effective. It is because really all of our emotions come from our subconscious thoughts, and the way that we feel about things also drives our behavior. So if we want to get those things to change, we want to feel differently, we want to release things that are causing triggers, or release things that are causing us to feel really sad or depressed or guilty or angry or whatever that might be, then we have to reach the source. It's sort of like if you were to take Tylenol or pain medicine for a headache. If the real reason that you have a headache is because you're dehydrated and you need water, then the headache's going to go away temporarily, but it's not going to go away forever. So that's why it's different, because we're getting to the source. We're reaching the subconscious, and we're releasing that through a process that you can actually get lasting results, and retraining your brain and reprogramming it.
Absolutely. We think more than 70,000 thoughts a day, and more than 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts day in, day out. So it's all about that programming. And listeners, if you're 35 or over, more than 95% of your thought processes are subconscious. So you don't even know you're thinking the thought. So this reprogramming is essential if you want a different outcome. So yeah, listeners, if you're listening today and you want a different outcome, this is where we need to start. In the brain. I love it. Okay, so now you're a coach now, and so how do people get hold of you? What sort of therapies do you offer? Is it a group environment or one-on-one?
Yeah, so in my coaching program, I offer one-on-one coaching, because it's really, really important to develop habits, right? Like we have so many habits. If you think about when you wake up in the morning, you probably do like at least 10 or 15 things without even thinking about it. Check your phone, brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, put your glasses on, different, whatever it is, right? We have these habits. And so in my program, we set up 12 weeks of coaching together on the same day at the same time every week, right? Because we're trying to develop those habits to try to get us into that same mind frame. And I don't do group coaching on this because it's very intimate, right? It's one-on-one, me and you together having a conversation and bringing up all of those subconscious beliefs. And like you had mentioned NLP, there's a lot of questions that I ask and a lot of sleight of mouth types of things where I'm trained to be able to help you shift these kinds of thoughts in the session, and as well as bring some of these subconscious beliefs up that maybe, like you said, you don't even think about. They're automatic. They're like these, it like autopilot on a car. It's just driving, right? We want to get you back in the driver's seat so that you know what these things are and be aware of it. Because awareness is really the first piece. If you're not aware that you have these subconscious thoughts, you can't fix it, right? If there's a hole in the wall, but you can't see it, you can't fix it, right? You have to be able to be aware of it first. So that's really where it starts. And so we'll sit together like one-on-one, and we will go through all of this stuff that is keeping you feeling. Let's say you're feeling like you can't stop thinking about your ex, or you're just feel like you're stuck in a trauma bond, or you feel like really low about yourself, whatever that might be. We'll bring all that stuff to the surface in these sessions. And then I teach you the process, and you get to go practice it and do it on your own and release these things and give you the relief that you really want. So, I don't know if you know this, but I also have a podcast that helps people with this. I give these tips and these tools and these techniques specifically to the types of things I experienced, and that other survivors and victims of domestic violence and emotional abuse and all these kinds of toxic relationships can bring along.
It is about having the conversations. And that's what's going to make the difference, isn't it? That's why these podcasts are so powerful, that they're getting the message out that regardless of where you are, you can have a different life. You do have the power to make a choice, and it starts with you. No one on a white horse is going to come rescue you. It needs to be you that rescues yourself, and it starts with changing the thought process. And just knowing that it is possible, knowing that we've got out, and that now we're paying it forward and making a difference to others. And wherever you are on your journey and you're listening, know that this is possible for you as well. So tell us, Allison, how do we get hold of the book?
Okay, so you can read, my book is available on online booksellers, but mostly available on Amazon. I know it's like on Waterstones and other international types of booksellers, but if you have an Amazon account, you can access it. And it's in Audible. So if you're not the kind of person who wants to leave your book lying out where if maybe you're still in the relationship with an abuser, you don't want them to see that you got that book out, just pop it in your earbuds. It's also available on Kindle and a paperback version. So there's 3 different ways that you can read the book, and you can get it on Amazon.
That's fantastic. And then how do people contact you for the coaching? We'll share the links, but do they just book an appointment? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I offer free calls just to even see, like, are we a good fit to work together? Is this something that resonates with you? Because it's not something that resonates with everybody, right? So it has to be something that really aligns with the type of healing work that you want to do. And I want to make sure that, we are connected and that that's a good fit for the both of us. So you can reach me on Instagram. You can reach me on Facebook. It's Allison K. Dagney, both of those, Allison K. Dagney on Instagram and on Facebook. Or you can just go straight to my website, and it's whentearsleavescars.com, because that's the name of my book. So I hope everybody can read it and really enjoys it. Because my goal really was just to help, if it can help one person, then, I'm satisfied.
That's fantastic. Okay, so all of these links will be in the show notes, and they'll also be in the description on the YouTube channel as well. So you can just click the link and read the book and book a call and see if Allison K is a good fit for you, and you can move forward and live the life of your dreams. I love it. So if you had one thing to share with our listeners today that could help them move forward, what would that one thing be?
That's a good question. I think for me, I'll just share what helped me was, and I know this is going to sound like, oh, everybody says this, but don't ever give up, because I can remember being in what I call it is the swamp. Like, I remember after I escaped and being in this really horrible, felt like I was in a black hole, and then I couldn't get out. And things were really, really difficult. The court stuff was really, really difficult. The kids were blaming me, saying it was all my fault, right? So I just had to like look myself in the mirror and say, don't you ever give up. Like, don't ever give up. So no matter what it is, all you have to do is take one step, right? One tiny little step. Even if you don't feel like it's making a monumental change, even if you feel like it's not really doing anything, it's doing something, right? Just keep moving forward and don't ever give up. That's the best piece of advice that I could give.
I love it. I'm thinking of Winston Churchill. Never. And it's
Yeah.
so true. And it needs to start with you having the belief that it is possible. So, the reason why we share on this podcast the different stories of people and how they've got to where they are is so that you can connect listeners to people's stories and see that it is possible for you as well. Wherever you are on your healing journey, whether you're still in the environment or freshly out, or on that recovery process afterwards, because ultimately healed people heal. And if you're on your journey of healing, it could be that you too do what Allison Kay has done and written a book, and then also, start a coaching business as well so that you can help others. And just remember that when a rising tide lifts all ships. So when you're raising your frequency, when you're raising your level, your life, then you're rising the level of the people around you. And we're all in this together. It's only one planet. It's so true. I love it, Alice. So what's next for you?
So I'm actually in the process of writing book 2, which is going to be the part, because my book ends right after I left. It doesn't get into the court stuff. It doesn't get into the healing stuff. It's literally just like from start to escape. And it's inspirational and it's really hopeful and all of that, but it doesn't go into the healing piece of it. I did dabble in a little bit with the therapy that I did with my coach, but now I'm going to try to put together a really great like self-help healing book that still sort of weaves in the things that I had to go through that I know a lot of people are also going through, like dealing with a toxic person in the midst of a divorce and the kids and court systems and things like that. So that's on the horizon next.
Oh, I love it. That sounds so exciting. So do you have a name for the new book, or is it a wait and see?
No, I don't have a name. I mean, ironically, like the book name that I came up with for When Tears Leave Scars, I didn't even name it until I was completely done with the book. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that just kind of comes to me. Like sometimes I'll just be like driving or in the shower and I'll think of something and then I just write it down. But then 2 days later, I'll look back and be like, that's a terrible title. I'm not using that.
I love it. Okay, so listeners, if you're wondering why people get such great ideas in the shower, it's because when we're in the shower, we usually drop into theta brainwave. So this is your opportunity to connect with your higher self and just move out of that subconscious space. And this is why I highly recommend you go to a dive shop and pick up the little sticky post-notes that you can stick on the wall in your shower. They're waterproof, divers use them. And then when you have these brilliant ideas whilst you're showering, you can write them down, because isn't that the truth? That often by the time we get out and dry ourselves off, we've forgotten what it is that brilliant idea was. And that's because the subconscious sneaks back in there to get you moving and get things going. But it is only there to protect you and help you move forward. Yes, and we do rely on it way too much. But if you can do what Allison Kay is talking about and have a look at changing those belief patterns and choosing the life that you want to live and rewriting that story for yourself, then you too can live the life of your dreams. It's been wonderful chatting with you today, Allison Kay. It's beautiful. And so you can see here on the cover next to us, you can see the cover of the book. Is that right, Allison Kay?
Yes, yeah. I am just so everybody knows, I just keep my identity concealed because my abuser doesn't know that I've written this book and doesn't know that I do this coaching work. So my kids are still underage and I don't want to be dragged to court or anything like that. So just out here protecting them and protecting myself.
Oh, that is, that's your mother instincts. I love it. And it's very protective. And your time will come to be able to stand out and out of the shadows. And that's what we need too, for the whole spectrum, so that they can energetically feel responsible for what they've done and decide to live a different life themselves. It'd be great if they could heal. It would be a great planet to live on if that's where we were going. Allison Kay, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to chat with you. And from us, from Healing Through Love, that's another podcast. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. We've got some exciting guests coming up. And we've also got our Pamper Day coming up in a few months. So we'll keep you detailed with all of that. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.